Welcome to our journey of transformation. We're in the fifth stage of our journey, and we have been talking about the parables, conversations, and principles of Jesus that help us understand how to love our neighbors as we love ourselves, because our lives continue to be transformed as we learn how to love as our Father loves. So in this study, we're going to be looking at a principle that Jesus taught in the Sermon on the Mount about just saying yes or no. It's a principle about truthfulness and integrity. So we're going to read from the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5, verse 33 to 37. Here's what Jesus said. Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made. But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. When the Samaritan loved his neighbor by caring for the injured Jew, whom robbers had left for dead, issues of trust did not arise at that moment. The Samaritan did not take the time to think about whether he trusted the man not to react with anger upon realizing that a Samaritan was touching him. And the injured man was in no condition to wonder if the Samaritan was going to pour oil and wine into his wounds to heal him or acid to burn him. They were from different races, provinces, and faiths. They had no connection, except that one was injured and the other had the means to cure the injury. At that moment, they both took a risk. The Samaritan took the risk to help his enemy, and the Jew took the risk of submitting to his enemy's help. But the choices that they both made turned out to be the right ones and resulted in the man's recovery. By taking those risks, they learned that day that they could trust each other, at least in some initial way. In time, these two men could have actually become friends as they learned to trust each other on deeper levels. Imagine, the Jew invites the Samaritan to meet his family and stay in his home the next time he travels to Judea. He wants his family to meet the man who saved his life. Then the Samaritan also encourages the Jew to stop for the night at his home whenever he travels from Judea to Galilee and needs to cross through Samaria on his way. He promises his home as a safe and comfortable place for him to rest on his journey. Imagine, too, that with time and communication between the two, their friendship begins to grow in trust. One day when they meet for lunch in Jerusalem, it occurs to them both to go into business together. The Jew owns a business in Judea that manufactures different kinds of rope for a variety of purposes, from farming to fishing. And the Samaritan is a merchant who buys goods in Judea that he sells in Samaria and other provinces. So they decide to become partners. The Samaritan will distribute the rope products for sale throughout the markets in Samaria and beyond. At first, the Samaritan buys the rope from the Jew to take to Samaria for sale. But then as the demand for the rope increases, the Jew delivers the rope to the Samaritan without payment until it sells. The Jew knows he can trust the Samaritan because the man has proven to be a loyal friend full of integrity. Many years later, when the Romans attack Jerusalem and the Jew has to flee with his family, he knows, without question, whom he can trust and where he can find refuge for his family, in the home of the Samaritan. Relationships begin, develop, and grow with trust. When there is no trust, there is no relationship. Trust means, first, to believe, based on a minimum of evidence that people will tell the truth, be transparent, fulfill their promises, be dependable, and protect our interests. Secondly, When we believe that certain people have these qualities to some degree, we begin to take risks with them, giving them responsibilities to fulfill, promises to keep, and secrets to guard, or even tell them truths that are difficult for them to accept. This second step of action turns belief into genuine trust. It is action that verifies and deepens trust. The principle that Jesus taught, that we should just say yes or no, opened up the entire subject of trust as a necessary quality of love for our neighbors. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus was directing this teaching first of all to the Pharisees. The Pharisees, who were powerful religious leaders in Jerusalem in the first century, needed trust from the common people they hoped would submit to their leadership. But many of the Pharisees were not worthy of trust. They were hypocrites and did not always tell the truth. In fact, once, in a moment that required clear, strong language, Jesus called them children of the devil. Because the devil is the father of lies, and the Pharisees were lying to the people they led. The Pharisees, in fact, had a system for making promises that also provided them excuses for violating their promises. Their system was far more complex than the simple method children sometimes use of crossing their fingers behind their back when they make a promise. There's a command that appears in the Old Testament about making promises that states, "Whatever your lips utter, you must be sure to do, because you made your vow freely to the Lord your God with your own mouth." Deuteronomy 23 and 23. So the Pharisees concluded that if they made a promise with God as their witness, they would have to keep it. But if they made a promise with someone or something less important than God as witness, then they had the option of breaking their promise, according to them. Furthermore, they had formed a list of things that they could call as their witnesses in a hierarchy of importance. They could swear by heaven, earth, Jerusalem, or the gold of the temple, or the temple itself, depending on how serious the promise was and how serious they were about fulfilling it. To swear by these things meant to make promises and then to call on these things as witnesses that they were telling the truth and would fulfill their promises. People more recently swear on the Bible or swear on their mother's grave that they will fulfill a certain promise. Why would it be necessary to provide witnesses to their promises, witnesses that in reality did not witness anything? The Pharisees created this system because they deceived people and did not fulfill their promises. They needed a way to explain what gave them the right to break their promises, because they swore by something or someone less than God himself, according to them. So Jesus told his disciples to be certain that their yes meant yes, and that their no meant no. Simply promise and keep your word. If you do not intend to keep your promise, then let your no be no. He further said that anything beyond this comes from the evil one, the father of lies. In other words, if we provide ways to avoid keeping our promises, then we set ourselves up to be tempted to lie sometimes, and then lie frequently, and then habitually, without feeling any regret. Paul repeated this teaching as a necessary element in our relationships with our neighbors. Each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, he said in Ephesians 4, verse 25. Speaking the truth is a necessary quality of love for our neighbors. The principle expands to include all aspects of our relationships. If our yes is yes, then when we accept a responsibility, we fulfill it and even go to the second mile with our obligations so that there will be no question about our faithfulness. If someone wants to share a thought with us in confidence, with the agreement that we will not share their thoughts with others, then let our yes be yes. We must not invent reasons to allow ourselves to share those secrets without regret. This is love for neighbor in practice. Trust is also a two-way street. Not only do we faithfully fulfill our promises and obligations when our neighbors trust us, but we also trust our neighbors to fulfill their promises and obligations to us. This two-way street is necessary for genuine relationships. To trust someone is a form of a promise, an agreement to treat somebody with special privileges. If we promise to trust, then we ought to trust. Maybe you have witnessed the parent or have been the parent that gives a child a fairly responsible task to complete, promising to trust them to perform the task well, and then constantly looking over their shoulder to make certain the child completes it perfectly. This is not trust. The yes be yes principle teaches us to trust fully when we promise to trust. It is at this point that loving our neighbors as we love ourselves takes a surprising turn. Letting our yes be yes and truly trusting our neighbors when we say we trust them is a form of love for our neighbors. One of the qualities of Christian love is that love trusts. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 7. But there is another very different sense in which love trusts. When we decide to trust someone, that trust moves through at least 3 stages. First, we agree upon some rules that govern how we must act to earn trust. For example, a supervisor gives an employee a job to do and the rules for completing the job. She then supervises the work at various stages to confirm that the employee is fulfilling the task according to the rules. If he finishes the project according to the rules, then he can be trusted to do a similar task in the future with less supervision. The next level of trust develops through experience. When the supervisor observes over a period of time that the employee always finishes his project correctly and on time, the supervisor realizes she no longer has to supervise. She can leave the employee to do the tasks on his own, trusting that he will honestly and faithfully complete them. She knows by experience how well he works and comes to expect success from him. Then, after the stages of rule-keeping and experience, comes another level of trust that goes beyond experience. The supervisor can decide to entrust the employee with a new responsibility that is completely different from previous projects, but is within the employee's ability to discover and understand how to complete. It will be a challenge, and the supervisor is taking a risk, but the challenge will build the employee's creativity and confidence level. As people pass through levels of increasing trust, we say that they are earning trust. We give them the trust that they deserve because they have proven themselves worthy of trust. We love our neighbors in the sense of caring for them when we give them what they increasingly earn. And when they break our trust and violate an agreement with us, they lose trust. We take it away because we decide they no longer deserve it. But this kind of love is love for those who deserve love. It is another application of the principle that everyone in the world discovers and practices. Love those who love you. Love those who deserve your love. Trust those who deserve your trust. Every disciple of Jesus, however, must learn a higher form of love that is unconditional, showing love in practice to those who may not love us in return, showing mercy to those who may not deserve mercy, showing compassion even to those who oppose us. When the Samaritan loved the injured Jew, his love was unconditional, without raising questions about what was deserved. So love, the Scripture says, trusts. Unconditional love for neighbor trusts. What does this mean? There are times when we choose to trust without conditions, without a person earning trust. This trust is a gift of grace, not motivated by our experience with the person, but simply a gift of love. When Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, "Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you," Matthew 5, verse 42, he was giving us an example of love that trusts unconditionally. It is a very powerful gift. There are people who are hurting because of the lack of trust they have been shown by those who were in a position to trust them. They may have had angry parents who, because of their own personal failings, constantly criticized their children, never trusting them to do well and be successful. The children grow up without enjoying the confidence and respect that comes from being trusted. On the other hand, there are parents who never supervise or criticize, leaving their children to find their own way. These children will also grow up, never learning the value of being trusted. There are other people who, after making many tragic mistakes and bringing their lives to the edge of destruction, decide to live a new life. They need someone to be the first to trust them before they have the chance to earn trust, simply to believe that they can begin a new life. All these people need trust as a gift of love to begin their healing. Love that trusts is the love for neighbor that the Samaritan practiced. Remember, the Samaritan, although he was not a neighbor to the Jew, became a neighbor by coming close to him to cure his wounds. The priest and the Levite, who were actually neighbors to the man, since they were from the same nation as the Jew, walked away along the other side of the road. We have a similar decision to make when we trust someone who has not yet proven he deserves our trust. We can walk away, deciding the person does not deserve our confidence, or we can come close, closing the distance between us, giving him trust as a gift of love. If we choose to trust, we have chosen to become a neighbor in the same way the Samaritan did. The gift of trust brings us close. Now, how is love that trusts related to the yes be yes principle? There is risk involved when love simply trusts. It is possible that the person may not know how to handle being trusted. There is a risk she might fail our trust, and if she fails, we might even decide to give the gift of trust again and run the same risk again. But if we decide that yes, we will trust, then our yes needs to be yes. We give the gift and refuse to let anxiety or mistrust enter our minds. We take courage, knowing that this is precisely what Jesus taught about loving our neighbors. Now think about the qualities of love that we discover through this principle. First of all, of course, there is truthfulness. Truthfulness is to speak only the truth without exaggerating or misleading people. And the principle of just saying yes or just saying no teaches us about the practice of truthfulness. We make promises. We are truthful about our intents and abilities to keep those promises. There's integrity. Integrity is to be the same person no matter whom we are with or where we are, and to be transparent, sincere, and honest. What does this principle teach about the practice of integrity? We must not pretend sincerity and transparency with our promises while thinking or doing something different than what we have promised. There is faithfulness. Faithfulness to do what we are responsible to do, to be dependable, to keep our promises, to be worthy of trust. Faithfulness is a quality of love. And this principle teaches us about faithfulness because our responsibility and dependability should be so clear to others that we don't have to swear, but instead simply affirm that we will do what we have promised to do. Yes, we will. There's unconditional love, of course. Unconditional love is to care for the welfare of another person without expecting anything in return and without thinking whether the person deserves our care. And this principle teaches us about unconditional love because it teaches us to trust others, even when they have not earned trust. It's a powerful gift of unconditional love. 2, there is perseverance, another quality of love, to endure without giving up or wavering. And this principle teaches us something about perseverance, because keeping promises that demand much effort and sacrifice to fulfill requires the patience of perseverance, not giving up, because building trust is worth the effort. Now, it's our turn to go and do the same. So, describe some examples of situations in which you need to trust people more. How do you communicate to people that you really do trust them? Describe some moments when you can give trust as a gift of love. And what will you do to prove yourself to be more responsible and dependable in relationships with people close to you and also with people whom you do not know very well? And in moments when you do not feel like fulfilling a promise, what will motivate you to persevere and keep that promise? And as you practice keeping your promises, being faithful and truthful to your neighbors, may God bless you.